So let's go to Richard Spencer's show. Vox Day was blogging about this.
I've never had any interest in it. And also, one thing we can also learn from the ancient world, we can also learn from the modern world as well, is this, there are hegemonic power blocks across the world. And that is not going to go anywhere. We aren't just going to simply just like devolve into little statelets of city states or neighborhoods or whatever they want. No, there's going to be big kahunas out there that have more power than others, and that are going to inform a geopolitical world order. And that just is what it is. We need to live in the world that exists and not in some, fantasy land.
It's also desirable. I mean, honestly, it's also desirable. I think that there's this famous parable in the Bible about the Tower of Babel. And the whole premise of that parable is that there are effectively these kind of non-Jewish figures who are trying to build a tower to go to the heavens. And it's so God sees them, the Jewish God effectively sees them as a competitor, right?
Right.
So he sends down his kind of minions. He says, let's go down and confuse their language and let's disrupt them, right?
Right.
So that Tower of Babel is actually kind of an ideal. I mean, that's something that our adversaries wouldn't want. And when I say the Tower of Babel, that would actually be a kind of unified culture, with a kind of this, unified language or a common language, right?
Right.
And common culture. I mean, we already have that to one extent or another, with English being sort of a common language in the Western world. But I think going in that direction, further in that direction, is actually a good thing. I think that there is a lot of
flip all this supposed biblical wisdom on its head. It's like this is the paleocon answer. Oh, the Tower of Babel or whatever. It's like, it's funny that a lot of these people are Catholics. I mean, it's like, no, we build structures that last 1,000 years. Like that is what we do. We build a Tower of Babel. We build Rome and we centralize things and bring people together. And this can last a long time. Yeah, nothing lasts.
Kevin, is it time for the alt-right to reclaim the Tower of Babel?
Well, I'm just wondering how long it's going to be before Richard Spencer has himself crowned the emperor or Kaiser, if you will, of the newly reconstituted Holy Roman Empire.
Have Richard Spencer wearing a pickle gober helmet, Kevin. I think that'd be just awesome. But can Kyle kind of explain who built the Tower of Babel? I'm sure he knows. I'm not convinced it was our people that built that.
Well, the Tower of Babel is a story. It's in the first 11 chapters of Genesis, which pretty much all biblical stories, scholars say, is mythic history. It's not literal history. But
Vox Day headlines his piece on this: a satanic racial imperialist. And yeah, I think that's right. Look, the symbolism of a building that was going to reach heaven, of making yourself equal to God. I mean, Richard Spencer is supposed to be a clever fellow, isn't he? Isn't he a graduate of Duke University with a master's degree? He doesn't understand the symbolism there of what happens to people who presume that they are gods themselves. I mean, I suppose he can blame it on the Jews, but this is pretty much received wisdom in the West, that you do not attempt to make yourself gods. Because hubris is followed by nemesis. The ancient Greeks believed this as well.
It's interesting that some liberal commentator who I like because they're clever said that Richard Spencer was a lot like a progressive Satanist. He kind of takes the progressive values and inverts them, but retains a huge amount of the structure and retains a huge amount of the belief. He wants to bring heaven to earth the way the leftists do. He just wants to do it in a different way.
Kyle's absolutely correct. Richard Spencer wants a large state and a central government, central control. He is a statist.
Well, it's this idea of national greatness. You used to hear about national greatness conservatism. So I guess this is what? Pan-national greatness, white supremacism that we're talking about here. I mean, when someone says we need to flip all the supposed biblical wisdom on its head, you can translate that to run for your lives, because it is the wisdom, the old wisdom of the Greeks and of the Old Testament, which is the pretty much the bedrock of Western civilization. You know, there was a book, a very famous book called An Island History, A History of England for Boys and Girls, written by a woman called Henrietta Marshall. And this was for generations read to British school children. And this is what she has to say about the Romans, and I suppose the Spencerian ideal, if you will. There were many good and wise rulers among these ancient British kings, but it would take too long to tell of them, so we must pass on to the time when another great warrior heard of the little lonely island and came to conquer it. The name of this great warrior was Julius Caesar. He was a Roman. At that time, the Romans were a very powerful people. They called themselves the masters of the world. It is true they were very clever. They had taught themselves how to fight, how to make swords and armor, and how to build fortresses better than any of the peoples who lived then. So it happened that the Romans generally won the victory over all who fought against them. But they were a very greedy people, and as soon as they heard of a new country, they wanted to conquer it and call it part of the Roman Empire. I read this because, I don't know, Spencer seems to think that we long for a one world government. And yes, there is a pride in European nations about a Roman heritage, but there is also pride in the resistance. You know, Boudica in Britain, Asterix in France, the resistance to the Romans. Because as a rule, people do not like being conquered. They do not like being made slaves.